Hello, human. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of A Cult of Misfits. I'm Matt Owens. If you're interested in such topics as spiritual enlightenment, inner transformation, esoteric wisdom, consciousness, or even interdimensional beings, if any of those things are of interest to you, consider checking out my podcast, A Cult of Misfits, where I talk about such topics and more. Today I want to dive a little bit into it's more of dipping my toe in the water than a real dive, to be honest with you. I want to talk about cosmic cycles. I don't know that much about Hinduism. I've just sort of touched the surface on it, and so I started diving into a new term called the yugas that I'd never heard about before, and it's a concept that I talk about frequently, and that is these cycles and patterns that are of the universe, of the world, and even on the micro level in our own personal lives, right? So the yugas are basically just another story of these cosmic cycles, right? Buddhism has it, the Mayans had it, the Greeks talked about it, the ancient Egyptians, they all had these cosmic cycles that they talked about. Now, there's not a lot of consensus on how long each of these cycles lasts, unfortunately. I always like to cross-reference all of these belief systems across the world to sort of see where the similarities are, what they're all talking about, when there's a pattern amongst what they're talking about. But with this one, there is no regularity in the length of these cycles that we go through in the universe. But the yugas, for example, have, I think, four cycles. It's gold, silver, bronze, and iron, I think, just off the top of my head. And so the first cycle, the golden cycle, lasts about 1.7 million years. Then the silver cycle lasts less than that, 1.3, and then it just kind of goes down from there, down from there, down from there, down from there, until you get to the bronze or the irons, the lowest one, the iron cycle, and that one lasts a few 100,000 years, right? But then you look into Buddhism or the Mayan calendar or whatever, and these cycles last, you know, several thousand years to hundreds of thousands of years to millions. So who knows? But when you start looking across all of them and seeing what characteristics are in the different cycles, that's kind of what I want to break down a little bit. Is because I found it interesting in these yugas, the Hindu philosophy, that in the top tier one, the golden era, the golden cycle, um, it's where we have our full power, our full God power, where we recognize what we truly are. We are one with the all that is. There is no separation. We're able to fully utilize all of the things, right? And then as all of these stories go, we start descending, 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 going lower and lower and lower in frequency, right? In vibration, through these dark ages that we go through. Um, and as I'm looking across all of these different belief systems, I'm seeing that there's a common thread that sort of strongly suggests that we are currently in that dark period right now. The lowest point is what I'm saying. So whether or not that low point lasts for, thousands of years or hundreds of years, or we're coming out of it now or going into it now, it's up to speculation, right? It depends on who you are and what your perspective is. But um, I kind of have the feeling as well that we are in a dark period right now on this planet, and we have been for, quite a while, arguably since the Dark Ages, hundreds of years. But perhaps we've been in decline for 1 million years, depending on if you listen to the yugas. So I think that we are in this dark period, this sort of upside down world, depending on which mythology you're looking at. I'm starting to question seriously whether or not there are these beings on this planet that are interdimensional, or we're unable to see them or perceive them in a real way, that are truly running the world. And I don't think that they're trying to take it over from us. I think that they were here first. As I'm kind of looking into all of these, the ancient origin stories, they all, I want to say all, but almost all of them, from every continent, from every neck of the woods, all of these ancient stories from Africa to Mesopotamia to Asia to the Americas to, Polynesia and the islands. And they're all talking about these beings that are coming from the skies. Some of them say that they're divine. Um, some of them call them the Watchers, angels, whatever you want to call them. Let's just sort of blanket statement here and just say that there are beings up there that have perhaps been here a lot longer than we've been here, and that perhaps had some sort of played some sort of role in our creation. Whether you want to label that being as a god or a pantheon of gods is up to you, of course, but all of our ancient ancestors talked about it in that way. And I find it very interesting that we chalk it up to myth nowadays. Because imagine if we were trying to communicate to our future ancestor, well, not our ancestors, but our future bloodlines and future generations, and we were trying to warn them of either a great cataclysm or of some esoteric information that we found of a spiritual nature that we thought was very important for future generations to know, and we put it on these stone tablets, hoping that they would discover them and it would sort of, help their civilization out after a cataclysm, perhaps. Imagine if that new civilization starts and they do find our stone tablets, and they're like, "Huh, what a bunch of silly stories those are. Those guys are just real good storytellers. But anyways, here's what really happened," and then they go off on some tangent that's just a bunch of BS, right? So I wonder if we are meant to take these myths and these ancient stories, specifically the origin story, specifically the flood story, and reevaluate it, and think like, well, maybe they were trying to tell us something here. Um, According to legend, according to all these myths worldwide, um, when they talk about the world ending, let's just talk about ancient Mesopotamia. This is in where Iraq and Iran are. The earliest civilization started here, according to mainstream scholars. Um, the earliest known writings that we've found were these flood stories about the beginning of the world from the Sumerians in Mesopotamia. And they were talking about how the humans became too disruptive on the planet. They became too loud and annoying, specifically according to the Mesopotamians. And the gods got upset by that and reset the whole planet. And I can see a lot of that happening now in our current age when we have no respect for Mama Gaia, Mother Earth. We're completely trashing it with no signs of stopping anytime soon. Sorry to tell you. Our consciousness leads that and guides that. So if we believe that we are heading in a good direction, then we will start heading in a good direction. But I'm just observing now and just seeing what the world looks like around us. Governments have complete control over us, and power over us. We've allowed that to happen. Um, just all of the corruption. I was thinking yesterday. I don't really talk about politics very often because it's just not in my mind very often. But um, I was thinking about the U.S. government and just I was thinking about aliens and disclosure and why are they hiding it? What are some reasons they would actually be hiding it? Which I've talked about a little bit and I'll talk about again, I'm sure. Um, but I've started thinking about how deceptive not just our government is, but I would argue all world governments are extremely deceptive and they lie to us on a regular basis. It's not like a new thing. They've sort of always done it. And I was thinking, if I had a friend in my life who was always lying to me and deceiving me and trying to trick me and like hiding stuff from me, I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? And I would not be friends with that person anymore. And I certainly wouldn't listen to them telling me to do or not do certain things because I'm not a real fan of that. And I just find it very interesting that how complacent most of the citizens are worldwide and just rolling over to their governments. And I'm not suggesting anything radical here. I don't want this to be taken out of context as it can be. I'm not insinuating anything violence at all or anything like that. But I just find it interesting that how complacent we've become, right? And how quickly as a people we are to just roll over to authority. And then there's people like me who have a real hard time rolling over to authority. And authority doesn't like people like me very much, right? But I feel like people like me are the ones who sort of create change in the world because if you just roll over and never change anything and just nothing will ever change. So I feel like we are heading in a good direction. I believe that I feel like as a people, we are becoming more aware of war and like why are we fighting these wars and the military-industrial complex and like why are we putting all of our money towards this? Like reevaluating more peace, more compassion, um, And so I think a lot of people are waking up to that now. And um, I think that that's a good thing. I think that there's going to be a lot of shakeup, not just in governmental structures, but financial structures and spiritual structures. I was talking to one of my sisters last week, and she said, "How many people in America consider themselves religious and go to church at least once a week? What percentage?" And I was like, "Ooh, that's a good one." And would you like to guess? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Um, the answer is 45% of Americans, and that's down from like 70 something percent 15 years ago or whatever. So I find it interesting that people are reevaluating their religions. I have a close friend that I won't name that was a Mormon for the longest time, and just recently told me that she's no longer Mormon. And my jaw dropped, and I was like, "What the what?" But I just find it interesting that people are just waking up in their own way to um, and I'm not going to presume why people leave these religious institutions. I have my own reasons for why I do it in my own life. I just don't like anybody telling me what to do or how to worship, or that what I'm doing is a sin or not a sin. Like, no thanks. I don't like that. The God that I worship is not Yahweh. My God is a little bit more loving and compassionate than it sounds like Yahweh is, but that's okay. I'm not worried about eternal hell or anything like that. So I feel like when I was looking at these cosmic cycles that I'm talking about, and we've been on this decline for a long time as a species. I do feel like we're on a path for these powers to awaken within us, and I'm talking about, I say, powers or spiritual technologies or biological technologies that have grown dormant over the last 10,000 million years, whatever it is. Over time it's degraded, and I think that the those that are in power on this planet know that, whether it's the Anunnaki or lizard people or interdimensional beings or what the Nephilim or just a bunch of crazy white guys, whoever you think is running the show around here. um, I feel like they are taking advantage of our malleable minds and programmable minds, and our natural ability to roll over perhaps is perhaps built into our DNA by our creators, according to the Mesopotamians, that we were created basically as slaves for these higher beings that they called gods. So perhaps it's part of our DNA to be complacent and roll over like that. um, but I think that over time, according to the yugas and other beliefs, that we degrade over time, and especially these powers that be, essentially poisoning our food supply and water supply with all of these chemicals, and just lots of chemicals in all of the things, right? All of our clothing and shampoos, and you can't escape it. There was a time when I really freaked out about it, and I felt real backed into a corner because, like, I'm either going to have to go off the grid and just like have my own organic garden, and I wasn't ready for that. So I had to come to peace with the chemicals in my shampoo or the chemicals in my toothpaste or whatever. I am fluoride free for those of you that care about my life. For pineal reasons, okay, guys. Um, Also, well, now that I'm talking about it, and actually, I just was reminded in my head that there is fluoride there, and it has been shown to lower IQs in the populace. And so this is just, I guess, it is another example of just these chemicals that are literally dumbing us down. Um, and just all of the fast food and garbage food and Doritos and all that stuff. Like, I love a good Dorito, guys, but it's dumbing us down. And I think of the movie X-Men Apocalypse. If you haven't seen it, it's this ancient Egyptian god rises back up, and he's been dormant for thousands of years or whatever, and comes back to reclaim his goddom and to let all of the X-Men, all of the mutants, those with powers, like, rise up, my children, and let us reclaim this planet that is ours. We are superior to the human being because we have these powers and we have divinity within us, etc. And so he started going around checking. He started finding all of these mutants around the world that had these powers, and he was just disgusted with all of them. He was like, "You're so weak and wimpy, and like, what happened to you? We are gods. Like, what has time done to you guys? You're just little weaklings now." Um, he said we have the power to rule entire universes, entire planets, entire galaxies, and you're over in the corner whimpering about dumb shit. Like, wake up and snap out of it. You are a god. And that really resonated with me. Because I do believe that we are divinity itself that is living in this 3D form, this 3D experience that we call the earth realm. And I do believe that over time we have lost these powers. There's all this junk DNA that scientists, mainstream science, has no idea what 99% of our DNA actually does. It's just a real head scratcher. And I think it's dormant DNA that at some point is going to be reactivated by cosmic rays. That'd be pretty great. Pretty Bruce Banner of God to do that to us. But I think about how these solar cataclysms happen on the planet, where these solar blasts come and they completely um, weaken our natural defense grid around the planet, which is our magnetic grid in our atmosphere. And so a giant blast of solar rays would do such a thing, and perhaps it would activate those dormant cells within us. It's very comic booky, guys, but I also think that maybe 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 our powers are meant to be activated. Maybe we're on the upswing now, and we're entering a renaissance period where we reawaken to our creativity and our powers, and the power of our mind, and eliminating these limiting beliefs that we have, and fears that we have, and blocks that we have energetically that are keeping us from these our divine right, our powers, right, that has been degraded over time. So I think I've been thinking about the human mind a lot, and the pineal gland, and just the body. And I'm really convinced when I have these conversations about well, what if this, and well, what about interdimensional beings and aliens, and well, maybe there were Anunnaki, and I start thinking about it more and more. But I have to just remind myself that at the end of the day, I really think this is all an illusion. And I talk about that often, but I there's lots of reasons why I actually believe it. I don't just I've looked into it. Mainstream science tells us that everything around us is actually just energy. There is no actual solid matter. It's just how our human system perceives it. When we touch an item in the 3D world, it sends a signal to our human mind that says, I just touched a pencil and it feels like this, right? Or you hear a sound and your human ears will hear that sound and translate it and then put it into your brain and say, we just heard a bird singing. And the eyeballs work the same, and all of our five senses, right? Like, I need to walk through what they are for you. But I think that all of those things are just ways that our human avatar can interact with this realm that we found ourselves in. But I think it's largely illusory. I think it's not real in a way that we think that it is. And perhaps that's part of the apocalypse, which is to say, a great revealing. Perhaps that's what disclosure is that, hey, surprise, none of this is real, right? That would be a real shocker to people. But the CIA has suggested that, and spirituality has suggested that, and ancient philosophy has suggested. This isn't just a new thing either. This is an ancient concept. All across the world, this is another common thread between all of the ancient civilizations. They all often talked about how the world is not real. That it's all, they use different allegories. It's a dream of God, or in the mind of God, or it's a hologram, or it's a video game, or who the heck knows, right? But I'm starting to think that this human avatar that we found ourselves in is more of a receiver, that I am not consciousness, but that I am a receiver of consciousness, the one that is, the all that is. That I receive consciousness, that I receive these divine downloads. Like when this wisdom comes to me, where it just like brings me to tears, and I'm like, holy shit, where did that come from? That was exactly what I needed to hear. It was the wisest thing I've ever said in my entire life, and it didn't come from me. Just like if you ask any of I was listening to something about Paul McCartney the other day, and he was talking about how, the lyrics just come to me. They like I don't know where they come from. I don't make them up. It just like they just come into my brain, and I go from there. And I think that if you talk to anybody who is creative, they'll confirm that for you. I can confirm it myself as somebody where I just when I record these things, oftentimes I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, and then I just start going off on a tangent, and it's like, oh, okay, well that's what needs to come through. So here it comes. And I feel like I'm in flow during those times. And I feel like when I'm in that flow is when my receiver is fully open. My heart, let's say, is fully open to receiving the divine wisdom or the divine energy that is coming through this avatar of mine. And so that's why when I start questioning all of this, I have to sort of go back to the fact that I think that there's a really good chance that none of this is real. And so then I think like, well, what the hell's the point of that? Because that I had to work through that emotionally and just intellectually. What does that mean for my life? If I am living in a simulation, um, what do I do with that information? Right? Now what? Does anything matter? Right? What is the point of any of this? Why don't I just go on a rampage? Or why don't I just, like drive off of this cliff? I'm not suggesting I'm going to. Please don't be scared that I'm going to. These are all just, I talk like that. And then I get calls from family members going like, are you okay? I heard you wanted to drive off a cliff. And I'm like, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor, Mom. Don't worry about it. So, anyways, I just, as a base foundation of my belief system that we're in a simulation, like, what do I do with that? And so then I start thinking about it like, well, I do believe there is a higher version of myself in a higher realm that some may call God, but I believe there's a higher aspect of myself that is in a higher dimension than myself, that is fully aware of everything that's going on right now and is listening to this conversation. Hi, how's it going? Nice to see you again. And I believe that I'm some sort of a video game character that my higher self is controlling. So I kind of don't think we have free will. I think that once we break free from this bubble or this matrix or this illusion or whatever the hell we're in right now, beyond that, beyond the veil, I believe we do have free will. But I personally believe this is just my intuition speaking. Um, I just don't think we have free will. But this is part of the reason why it's been easier for me to go with the flow because I'm like, if I truly believe that, which I kind of do, nothing for me is like I'm 100% this and I totally believe that. You can't convince me otherwise. I don't live like that anymore. I used to be very black and white, and I'm like, well, maybe today this is what I believe. That could change next week, but it helps me to go with the flow. If I truly believe that A, I'm always taken care of by some sort of divine being, B, that everything always works out in the best possible and highest way for my soul, and C, I've been told that if I go with the flow, that everything will just work out better. I just try to listen to what the ancient wisdom and philosophy tells us to do. I mean, it's been there the whole time. It's not new. But I've actually, for the first time in these last couple of years, started applying these things to my life. Like, what does it look like to actually go with the flow? To actually trust as much as I can uh, that the cosmic river and my divine conductor is taking me where I need to go. And if this is all scripted, then why am I trying to freak out? Why am I trying to control this situation or control that person or this scenario or try to scramble to make this happen? Why am I doing that? It's just causing more discomfort within my system, more suffering within my mind. And so I've found in my own life that when I do choose to just let go, let go, let go, it's a process. It's a process. We're so used to gripping so tightly onto things and just learning to let go, that none of it really matters at the end of the day. How often have you heard stories of people who went to the other side and had a life after death experience or whatever, or astral traveled or whatever the heck, and they say none of this matters. The things that I was worried about and stressed about, like, why did I waste all those years stressing and worrying? So I'm like, okay, thank you for that advice. I'm going to start applying that to my life now. Thank you very much. And it's so difficult to reprogram our minds, right? But learning to just let go. And I often will ask the universe for scenarios that I can practice letting go. And I have two examples for you. I used to be a professional photographer. I did a lot of food photography for I started out doing it with local restaurants, for those of you that don't know, and then I eventually started working with some major food delivery companies that deliver food from restaurants to your house, and taking their food photography for their apps. And it was a dream job. I was flown all over the country. This all expenses paid stuff. It was extremely glamorous, and I'm not saying it to brag. I'm saying it because like it was really kick ass. I really had a great time. And so because I was constantly processing thousands and thousands of photos every week, it was just like this high volume, taking pictures of 10 to 12 dishes per restaurant, and then like 10 restaurants a day or whatever, and then we're just cranking out a lot of photos is what I'm getting at. So I had to have these enormous hard drives. 1 terabyte is a large hard drive, and I was running with like 20 terabytes because I had videos on there as well, and just photos from all of my clients, photos from all the things. So I needed these enormous hard drives, and on those hard drives I also had just all videos and photos of my kids over the last 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Family photos, um just everything was on these hard drives is what I'm getting at, right? And so part of acceptance and learning to let go, an example of this is I just discovered that my hard drives completely crashed, and uh I didn't have them backed up. And as a photographer, I always had everything backed up in like triplicate because I was super paranoid that it was going to fail on me. And because technology does, and it did, I was very thankful I had triplicate. Well, on this journey the last couple of years, the universe has really been helping me to let go of just all the things, right? But specifically material things in my life that I latched onto. Why do I hold on to um, just everything, right? These things from my childhood, or these mementos from high school, or these memory box that I never look at that just gathers dust. Like, why do I have these things in my life that I'm lugging around everywhere I move to? So the universe really gave me a challenge to let go of all of that, and it ended up getting to a place where I gave away all of my worldly possessions. It was very biblical, but I felt led to do it, and I've talked about it before in the past. But it was just a lesson in listening to my intuition, because that's what my intuition was telling me that I needed to do for my soul, for my spirit, to experience that letting go of these material goods, letting go of the past, letting go of all of these things that I've been clinging to for so long, right? And it was very difficult, and it was very challenging. But eventually got myself to a place where I let go of all of my material goods, just like Jesus asked his disciples to do. And it never really connected with me until I had to let everything go. And I didn't have to, of course, but I did. Well, maybe I did if there's no free will, right? But um, it's just about letting go. And so I literally let go of all of my worldly possessions. And I clung on to these hard drives as the last relic of my past, because I had let go of, well, literally everything. And so I kept those hard drives, and they finally went last week. And I just said, well, that's a bummer. Nice knowing you, I guess. And that was it. And I never thought about it again. I didn't dwell on it. Now, if you had told me back when I was a photographer that my entire hard drive would have been wiped and I had no backup, I would have had cardiac arrest on the spot. I was so stressed out and so anxious all the time of losing my clients' photos. That was like the worst case scenario. I would be so mortified. I can't reshoot it. That was like the worst case scenario, right? And so that's why I backed up everything in triplicate, because I was so freaked out. And when my hard drives would glitch or not be working correctly, I would be sick to my stomach. I would have this knot in my stomach, and it was just like a lot of stress around it. And so part of this process was learning to just let go of that. And in doing so, it was real challenging, like I said, to let go of my worldly possessions. But in doing so, I've got myself to a place now where I can lose my hard drives and just say, huh, well, wasn't meant to be, I guess. And that's it. And then think like, well, what's for lunch? And I've been working at that very, very, very hard these last couple of years specifically, and I'm proud of myself for how far I've come. And it's a testament to the fact that anybody can do this. We think, oh, I could never let go of my addiction to this, or I could never let go of my childhood collection of that, or I could never. But guess what? When you start clinging on to that, the universe has a way of forcing you to let go of those things, whether God forbid, whether it's a house fire or a flood or a wiping of the hard drives, the universe has a way of saying, let go of that. If you don't do it yourself, I'm going to do it for you. You're going to learn to let go and you're going to learn to accept. So I've learned that the easier path is to just listen to when spirit tells you to do something, not in a put the fear of God into you, Old Testament Yahweh situation, but more of a loving and guiding. This is the easier path. This is the less rocky path, is to just accept it, as the Eastern philosophies all talk about. Learn to let go, learn to accept, right? And so I found, specifically too, the second story I was going to tell you was about my dog Chi. um, it drives me absolutely insane anytime he is grooming himself, when he's licking himself or licking his paws or lapping up water. It's the most disgusting, vile sound in the world, and it drives me insane. And Spirit said that that would be a great time for me to practice acceptance of whatever noises are around me. And I was like, oh, okay. I always get the human always gets a little annoyed when Spirit points out something that's obvious and it's a challenge where I'm like, oh, okay, fine, fuck, fine, let's do this. So what I do is I practice sitting there quietly and just listening to my sweet Chi lick his stupid fucking paws. And just waiting until it's over, right? It's usually not that long, I've found. It's not like a 20-minute bender that he goes nuts. It's usually just like a minute or two. It's the longest fucking minute or two though, right? But I practice when I hear a noise that's really annoying to me, I practice sitting in it, learning to accept it, learning to love it. So I just thought it might be helpful to share some of these things. Like I've been saying lately, I'm just sharing my notes. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I don't care whether you do or you don't. But I just like to explain, like, when I talk about these really deep philosophical concepts like acceptance or learning to let go, I like to give examples in my own life that are practical, to let you copy my notes, to be like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing there. And maybe I can do that in my own life and learn to let go. It's the scariest hump to get over, learning to let go of things. So all of these things that we talk about are hard humps to get over. But once you get over them, I feel like um, you have that new perspective and you can look backwards and be like, okay, yeah, I did think that was hard. Yes, it was a big challenge, but yeah, life is at least a little bit easier now, right? I'm getting a little bit better at this acceptance thing. I'm not there yet, but I know that I will get there. It's like when you go to the gym for the first time, you're not going to really see results for a minute. And then you start to see it, and then you start to see it, and then it grows. Then your muscles expand, spiritual and literal muscles expand. And then you start looking in the mirror and you're going, okay, I see what's going on here and I like it and I want some more of it. And so, so that's what I do. And that's what I pass along to you guys, is like, hey, this is something I've been working on and it was really rough, but now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm pretty good at this acceptance thing. But the universe always has new opportunities to sharpen my sword, my skills, right? To keep me in that flow, right? Noises that bother me or taking things away from me. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Okay, that's fine. Wasn't meant to be. Bye. Guess that wasn't meant to be, right? Because it's that stripping away process, metaphorically speaking, of course. Peeling away of the onion, the burning away, turning into ashes so that the new version of you may be reborn. The caterpillar crawling into the cocoon, boiling down into a pile of ooze, and then reforming again into the butterfly. Lots of metaphors, guys. So the stripping away process is very painful. But for those of you that are on a similar journey to mine, I'm sure you know, and I often need a reminder. So here's your reminder that it's worth it. Whatever pain you're going through right now, whatever stripping away you're going through, dark night of the soul, challenging experience, challenging people, challenging situations, that you're going to look back on today and it's going to be worth it. I want to encourage you to continue on your path. I know it looks scary and that the voice in your head is probably telling you you can't do it, but you can. That voice is bullshit, in case you didn't figure that out yet. That voice is bullshit. So put a mute on that and know that you can do anything. Love you.